Our guest today is Councillor Todd Lever, candidate for Mayor of Timmins in the upcoming municipal elections. Todd is a fourth-generation native of Timmins. After graduating from O'Gorman High School, Todd went on to earn an undergraduate degree from the University of Waterloo, and then attended law school at the University of Ottawa. Todd was called to the bar in 2004. He began his legal career back home in Timmins, where he lives with his wife Julie, and in 2010 opened his own law practice. Throughout his 4 years on council, Todd has participated on many boards and committees. Speaking of Timmins, is pleased to welcome Councillor Todd Lever. Many people have wondered if you'll maintain your law practice should you become mayor. Could you please clarify?
Yeah, and I appreciate the question because I know this is an issue that's that people have discussed. I started my law practice 4 years ago, and ironically, the reason I chose to go out on my own was because I wanted to be on city council, and the only way to manage certain conflicts, if I had worked for other firms, you know, a client comes in, they have a disagreement with the city or whatever. So by being on my own, I'm able to stay completely away from anything city related. But specifically to answer your question, I know that the Mayor of Timmins is a more than full-time job. I'll be a more than full-time mayor. I just recently hired an associate. I'm hoping that I can keep my practice open. I have the 3 full-time employees, but I would be stepping away from, I wouldn't take on any new clients. I'll have to close off some current files. Otherwise, everything will be transferred. I'm much more committed to a future as a elected official. That's my goal anyways. Then, you know, I don't want to be a practicing lawyer in 10 years.
What were the highlights or what you consider to be the major accomplishments of your 4 years as councillor?
Yeah, I think if I could, you know, point to one specific issue that I think we handled well for the most part would be with the Gold Corp pit and the best management plan. Mm-hmm. I think I would have liked to have seen more public consultation with council further away from when the decision had to be made. Like really the first meeting officially to consider the site plan was in September, and they wanted us to make a decision by November. I would have liked that to have gone farther back, but the nature of these things is people don't really get engaged until it's, you know, ready to happen. Mm-hmm. But within those 2 months, we had a lot of meetings. We had a lot of, you know, I think everyone was heard. Their positions were heard. And, you know, there were valid points on either side. But I think as a council, we got through that issue well. And, you know, at the end of the day, we were all committed to making sure the project went forward. But, you know, you need to balance that with the concerns of, you know, immediate landowners, adjacent landowners, and of course, you know, the broader concerns of the community. So that was one thing. You know, the strategic plan, what people have to remember is that the funding for that was a direct result of the Met site closing. So that was the you know, the basis for that strategic plan. The planning process itself was, I think it was positive overall to involve a lot of the community members, but you know, I think that could have been done, with all due respect to the people in that process, in half the time at half the cost. You know, there's a point where you collect your information, you consult, and then you decide. So that, you know, that's sort of a plus and minus. Okay. Otherwise, you know, highlights, just being on council for the first time. It's, you know, we're from a small town. Mm-hmm. You become elected, and then people start to recognize you on the street, which is odd. And just getting to meet, you know, a lot of the people who make things happen in the city. Mm-hmm. You know, not just administration, but you know, your major business people in town. You know, it's there's a kind of a negative strain that you see online all the time. But overall, there's really good, smart people in Timmins.
If you could get one do-over from your 4 years as councillor, what would it be?
That is a good question. I wish I would have pressed harder and much more aggressively on our on this strategic planning process to demand action items and results,
Okay.
instead of the process. Process is very important, consultation is important, but you know, we're elected to make decisions, and I find a lot of this process with the strategic plan, and when we deal with consultants, and not these specific consultants, but anytime we go out and bring consultants in to help us with projects, we sort of hand the ball off, you know, and then when people ask us what we're doing about something, we say, oh, you know, we're getting a housing report. The final housing report is going to be presented at council tomorrow, and I've read it. It's got some good stuff in there, but phase 3 is supposed to be implementation, and there's not really any bricks and mortar solutions in it. I'd like to have really raised awareness to it early on and say, let's get some results here, because we're 4 years into it. We still have a major housing problem. The market has changed, the housing market has changed, but we still have a major housing problem, and we haven't, you know, we've got a report finally. 4 years, a report. Okay, that's good. I'm not saying the report isn't good. We needed it for, you know, we partnered with DSAB. We needed it to satisfy government requirements for future funding. So there's a component of that. But we handed it off to someone else. I think we abdicated a lot of our responsibility as council. And if I had to do it over again, you know, I would try and move that process much, much faster, because it doesn't need to take nearly as long as it has.
Many candidates in this election are speaking about change. What specific changes do you think must be made by the new council should you become mayor?
Yeah, another great question. And I did, you know, my campaign motto is real change, period, or en français, changement véritable. And you're right, politicians use a lot of words like change, accountability, transparency. What do they mean? What's specific? So I have a lot of specific things that I want to put into practice from day one. Firstly, mayor and council are going to lead. They're going to direct administration to come to, this is where we want to go, and come back to us with your opinion, your information, your recommendation, the facts. You know, they're the professionals, but council is going to lead, right? I can't speak for the rest of council, but if I get elected, first thing to do with budget is a budget directive to administration to say, next year, operational budget, 0% increase. Come back to us, make it happen, show us what it looks like, and then we can discuss it, right? All we've done as a council is react. The table is already set when we get there, right? And so we react and we don't lead. So first thing, that's what I would do different. And you know, this is how a municipality is supposed to work, in my opinion, like a corporation, right? Shareholders elect directors. Directors advise and make policy for the executives, and the executives execute and manage. And that's not what happened. So, you know, a 0% budget directive, what does that mean? I know they can do it. They did it in our first year. I want to set up a mayor's advisory committee on operational efficiency. Okay. So, because you have to focus on, you have to have an attitude of constantly improving your the efficiency of your operation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So myself, another councillor, a member of administration, I'd like to invite the Chamber of Commerce to designate a person who will sit on this committee, and then an appointee from the member of the public. They'll be making recommendations that will lead to decisions by the mayor and council. So you kind of create a buffer between the public and, well, not a buffer, but an intermediary between the public and council, because there's a big lack of trust between the public and then your mayor, council, and administration. So this would be an active committee, the goal of which, one of the first things I'd like to do is an organizational review, but internally, meaning we try and get as much of it done as we can without having to bring in a consultant right away. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I want to do. I think that goes to accountability and transparency, because even though that member from the Chamber of Commerce, hopefully if they appoint one, will be, we'll have to respect the confidentiality of the issues we're talking about. They can go back to the chamber and say, the mayor and council and administration are really looking into trying to reduce their expenses and run the city better. And that carries more weight than just the mayor saying it or a councillor saying it, because it just sounds like another politician. I'd like council to request that costing from the OPP to look into the potential savings of switching from City of Timmins Police to Ontario Provincial Police. Without knowing the numbers, we can't make a informed decision, but there's a potential to save a lot of money.
So what you are saying is that you are open to the idea of looking into the possibility of transferring police services from the city to the Ontario Provincial Police.
And no, I'm not only open to it, I'm going to actually, right now, the Ministry of, I believe, Community and Correctional Services, or the Attorney General, I'm not sure, there's a moratorium on the OPP accepting requests from municipalities. I spoke with the Superintendent of Municipal Policing about 2 weeks ago. They are expecting to lift that moratorium in the summer of 2015. For those who have been following it, the OPP has released a new billing model in August to try and even out the highs and lows of some communities paying for OPP policing. But you request the Ontario Provincial Police to come, they crunch the numbers on your community, they come back and they say, if you switch, there's one-time transition costs, and then here are what you can expect to pay policing on a year-over-year basis. And to be blunt, there's no single action that council could take that has the potential to save more money for the taxpayers than looking into that issue. I mean, this is a specific platform item that I will bring before council. I don't know what the results are going to be, how much we may save, but we got to look at it and assess it. Okay. One of the big problems with I think with City Hall and council is they're too scared to discuss difficult issues because they know they're going to upset someone, right? It's better not to change than it is to change something and upset one group of people. So, and that'll be a difficult issue to get through.
You are running a campaign where you have outlined your vision for the future of the City of Timmins, yet the mayor only gets one vote. How do you plan on working with the next council to implement a vision that you will be elected to implement if the majority does not share your vision?
A lot of U.S. cities have a strong mayor system, which is the mayor has a veto over everything, which I think is a better system because the mayor can't ram something through without council, the bulk of council, and neither can council without the mayor, because most people, when they're voting for mayor, that's the leader of their community, right? Council, yes, but the mayor is the leader of the community. So how do you translate that into you're right. What if 5 people are going against the mayor? Well, the first thing you do is, as I said before, you sit down with your council at the beginning of the term and you say, what are the goals we want to accomplish? And, you know, you're going to, in general, we all want to move the city forward, but there's going to be disagreement on specific issues. You know, you work with specific councillors, you know, and say, okay, this is what I'm going to be presenting in the next couple of months. You know, what's your position on it? And then, you know, when you're at the council table, that's where you get some compromises. I have no problems. You know, I'll sit down with every councillor and, you know, just discuss it. But, you know, you gotta ultimately, you know, like let's talk about the OPP costing issue. And I don't even know what side of that I would be on once the numbers come back. But ultimately, you know, the council will decide as a majority. So, you know, you lead as best as you can. You know, no disrespect to Mr. Manchester, but, you know, if either myself or Councillor Black are elected, I think we've got that mandate from the public to move forward with what we presented.
Another question that has been mentioned a lot on social media and throughout different conversations that have happened in the lead up to the election October 27th is, as mayor, how do you plan on balancing the needs of individuals on fixed income with those that expect better quality of life options for their tax dollars?
Yeah, and I mean, you know what? That's, in a nutshell, that's exactly what you have to do as a mayor and as councillors. You cannot favor one of those to the detriment of the other. It's about striking the right balance, right? You know, I presented a tax deferral program for low fixed income seniors that I'm hoping if I'm elected, I can pass that through council, where they'll be able to sort of defer any increases in their taxes, so that, you know, once the house is sold, then that would be recovered.
Your tax deferral proposal for seniors will certainly be applauded in some circles, but how will you fill the gap in tax revenue created by this deferral without increasing taxes for others in the community?
Right. Well, firstly, that's a very, you know, what I propose is a very narrow, has a very narrow focus. You're talking, you have to be eligible, low income, fixed income, senior. When you propose changes, you run a pilot program. You put borders on it, right? And say, okay, only 100 people are going to do this year, so it's only going to cost us X amount. But to your bigger question of, you know, how do you balance that? I mean, you know, if I'm elected, I'll be 39 years old, mayor if I'm elected, and, you know, ultimately, if you're not trying to make your community better, a better place to be, I don't think you should be in politics. And, you know, if all you're going to do is come in and say we should cut and gut as much as we can so that people pay low taxes, that's not my philosophy. We have to spend and invest in the future, but we have to do it wisely, and we can do it wisely. So that, you know, that's the balancing act.
During your term as councillor, the city had a leisure, culture, and tourism master plan developed. As mayor, would you be prepared to make the financial commitments necessary to implement some of the key suggestions of that plan?
I think tourism is on the right path. I've had a lot of things to say about tourism over my term, especially regarding the Shania Twain Center and the Gold Mine Tour. But I wouldn't necessarily call that a highlight, because you asked the first question about a highlight. But I'm glad we finally, as a city, we finally dealt with that issue and have moved on. But, you know, tourism is important to support the local economy, but of course a lot of the tourism economy is based on our overall economy and people coming to Timmins for work. Now, specific recommendations, there's a specific recommendation that we hire a coordinator of culture. I'm not sold on that. I don't think the city should be should be actively involved in programming, in delivering programs. A good example would be the gymnastics club. I think having transferred that to a not-for-profit organization to run, where we provide the facility, was a great model of how I would support recreation, culture, and tourism in Timmins.
Speaking of recreation, if you're elected as mayor, would you be open to looking more concretely into the feasibility of a new multi-sports recreation facility for the city of Timmins?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm all in favor of it. What really, I'm kind of disappointed. What I thought originally the recreation study was going to be, I had hoped a component of it would be a feasibility study, a comparison, right? Mm-hmm. We don't know. So the first, I'm 100% in favor, and I'll actually put it in the 2015 budget, is let's get this feasibility study done to see how much it's going to cost us, but then how much is it going to save us, because we're not going to have to do repairs now on this new facility for 20 plus years. We're not going to need to do capital repairs. So let's do that comparison. What we're spending now versus what the cost of a new facility will be, and the savings. So let's get that study done. And there's going to come a time where council is going to have to decide what to do with the McIntyre. And the recreation study, the proposal, if you read between the lines, they're kind of grandfathering out the McIntyre, right? Mm-hmm. Their suggestion is to not use it for ice anymore. Okay. I don't really see the point of, the McIntyre is the Mac because of the rink and because you play there. Yep. And all of the history that goes there.
The secondary sewage treatment plant. Many people are concerned about the escalating costs of that project. If you're elected as mayor, what do you anticipate doing to ensure that this project does not become an overwhelming burden on the finances of the city, both in the short and in the long term?
Yeah, well, we were told it was $60 million project. By far, the single largest project in the history of Timmins by, I'm going to say, fourfold. Like 60 million. What's the biggest project we had spent on before? So when a $60 million project starts to go sideways, it's a lot worse than a $5 or $6 million project. I'd like to, I'm not going to call it an auditor's report, but I'd like to hire an independent company to do a study and a report on exactly what happened and when and why. So I think we should hire an independent firm to do a study and a report on that, to get all the facts right. Okay. And to give us an opinion as to whether it was handled well or not. One of the things we don't do a good job at is when mistakes are made, they tend to get swept under the rug. When you do that, you erase any sort of institutional memory that could benefit future councillors, mayors, and administrators, right? Mm-hmm. To say, this is what happened. Another thing that I can tell you, and I was very upset with, I'm still upset with it, was that the problems with the where the bedrock was, mm-hmm. that was, they found that out in December of 2012, all right? This ended up costing us, I believe, I've got a number of $6.5 million in my head. Council was not told about that until September of 2013, 9 months later. And then, to make matters worse, they didn't present that to the public until last spring of 2014. And when you go back to the idea of changing things, yep. That's what needs to change. That is not transparency, and that's not accountability.
Aging infrastructure is a growing problem for communities throughout Canada, and the provincial and federal governments have not been as forthcoming as many would like in helping offset the cost of fixing older infrastructure. As mayor, what would you do to help Timmins prepare both in the short and long term to make it fiscally feasible for Timmins to update its infrastructure?
The problem there is, and this is why people hate property taxes, is because it's the most visible tax, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your property taxes go up, but when you get a raise, guess what? Your taxes just went up.
Yep.
Because you're getting more money, you're paying more taxes, right?
Yep.
Anyways, my point is the federal and the provincial government, it's so easy. It's easier for them to balance their books because they can do it on our backs. And then the municipal taxpayers look at us and say, how come my taxes are going up again? We got to spend all this money on our roads and sewers and water and everything. Well, it's because we're not getting the money we should be getting from the provincial and the federal government. Yeah, so, how is your mayor going to advocate at a regional, provincial, and federal level?
Yep.
And, a lot of that advocacy just obviously comes back to passion and organization. I think Mayor Loughran did an excellent job in rallying, Northern Ontario mayors to speak as one voice, but we have to speak louder, right? The federal election is next year. We have to force every party to come to tell us exactly what their platform is in terms of infrastructure spending. What we need actually is we need a dedicated income stream and a dedicated revenue that we can plan. Because right now everything's done on a project by project basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Timmins specifically, we got to get together and figure out how to squeeze more out of, and I'm not saying squeeze more out of the mines. It's the province and the federal government, because of the resource industries we have in Timmins, right?
Mm-hmm.
The capital, the money is underground in a lot of locations, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we don't get the property tax base. Because we can only tax the surface structures, we don't get that revenue. The government gets it through, the corporate taxes and royalties from resource extraction, but we don't get it.
Some people say that the key for Timmins moving forward is to diversify the economy so that we are not as dependent on the mining industry. Is diversification something that you would focus on if elected as mayor?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I've often thought about, we always hear that buzzword diversification, and I think the best thing you can do is obviously bring in jobs and business that aren't reliant so much on the on the mining industry, on the price of metals. So what are those jobs? Those jobs basically are your government jobs, right? Your healthcare, your education. The TDC is trying, or one of the Timmins 2020 projects is an English university in Timmins, or a university campus. We have University de Hearst and we have Northern College, that offer university degree programs. But wouldn't it be to have our own sort of major size university campus in Timmins? I'm pretty sure we're the largest population, the largest community that is the furthest away from a full-time, full charter university. And I don't want to say English-only university, because to me, I think we should have like a Laurentian type of university, a bilingual university. It's very, very difficult to diversify. To me, what you do is you strengthen your current, you work to strengthen your current businesses.
Yeah.
And the benefit we have in Timmins now is we're a base, a hub, a jumping point for a lot of mining camps. And if the Ring of Fire can pan out and develop the way it should, Timmins, whether or not we get a processing facility here, we will benefit because all of our secondary contractors, suppliers for the mining industry, and actual miners, people who are going to work there because they're going to be fly in, fly out, or 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out. We have to just gird ourselves and strengthen for, hopefully the next upswing in metal prices.
It's now time for our rapid fire questions. If you could go out for dinner with 3 living individuals you've never met before, who would they be?
Ooh, 3 living individuals that I've never met out for dinner. Barack Obama, Pope, and Oprah Winfrey.
Okay, next question. 1 book everybody should read in their lifetime.
The Alchemist, I think everybody should read, by Paulo Coelho, Coehlo.
Yep.
That's a really good story for, even preteens, teenagers. I just remember reading that a bunch of times when I was in university, when you're sort of, you don't know what you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
It's a really good story.
What is the favorite place you've ever traveled to?
In Rome, the Pantheon building was built how many thousand years ago? Still as solid as a rock. Well, concrete, which the Romans invented.
Name a couple of things that people would be surprised are on your bucket list.
Well, I shouldn't say this because my wife can hear me right now. I would like to do a Ironman triathlon at some point in my life. My wife has done 3. So I would like to do that with her. I would like to learn how to box.
That concludes our interview with Councillor Todd Lever. To view more interviews and other content by Speaking of Timmins, please visit our Facebook page and like or join it, or visit us at www.speakingoftimmins.com.